Hi, welcome back to Celebrating Culture. We're coming to you today from Metairie, Louisiana, in the office of Congressman Steve Scalise, who is the Republican whip for Congress. But he also represents the Italians of Louisiana that migrated here with a lot of dreams. Steve, welcome to the show.
Great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Tell us, your family comes over and goes to Garyville. You have ancestors from many different regions, though.
Yeah, right. They all came from Sicily, but my dad's side in Italy, they still have relatives there. They go by Scalise. And then I guess they Americanized it when they came to the United States. And, as you know, Italians were discriminated against. And, they worked really, really hard. My great-grandparents who came here they went to Garyville because they were indentured servants on a sugarcane farm. And so they worked there for years. And then once they went through that process, they came to New Orleans and then opened up a small grocery store like a lot of other Italians who had come here.
That seems to be the pattern. My ancestors did the same thing. And then it goes from the grocery store to pushing education, it seems.
Yeah, it was one of those things where you come here because they had the famine in Italy, and so a lot of Italians left Italy, went to many places, but a lot came here to New Orleans and started a little culture and started to bring a lot of those traditions from Italy here, and luckily so many of those are still around today, but it's harder and harder to keep those alive. But they're great traditions because my grandmother would she'd cook the best lasagna and those recipes that are gone. My dad even kept that going, and he would make great stuffed artichokes, and so you love those traditions. It seems to be dying off, but we need to keep it going.
Well, you have Aunt Sandra, and she likes cookies.
Oh my gosh, Sandra Juno Scalise. Sandra has been just really, really passionate about, especially the St. Joseph's Day traditions. She makes the fig cookies, and they'll lay out this whole display in our kitchen, and then she brings them out, and they still do the St. Joseph's altars around the city. And again, maybe a dying tradition, but she's trying to pass it on, and she does courses for people, and it's great to keep that tradition alive.
We filmed her course. She had it at the Italian Cultural Center. I mean, she showed people, and it did a great overhead projector. I mean, she takes it serious, teaching cookies.
Absolutely, and they're really good, by the way. I still get them every now and then, and you definitely enjoy that part of our tradition. And so many people. Joe Maselli was one of those giants in the Italian American community who, early off, when I started getting involved in running for public office, who helped open doors for me, and the cultural center downtown and the piazza, and just keeping that alive. And Frank, his son, is continuing that tradition. So, to see each generation handing it off and trying to get their kids involved is really important.
You got married on St. Joseph's Day. We talk about keeping it going.
Yeah, Jennifer and I, we were looking at dates, and this was in 2005 that we got married. And one of the things we looked at is we didn't want to get married during hurricane season because of the uncertainty. Little did we know that Hurricane Katrina would come in August. But we said, okay, let's do it earlier, and of course we looked at St. Joseph's Day, and March 19th is our wedding date, and it was a great time. We had Aunt Sandra put together a St. Joseph's altar at Gallier Hall is where we had our reception. We got married at the St. Louis Cathedral, went to Gallier Hall, and we had a St. Joseph's altar there.
Did you hear the parade? Because that's like the parade is going by.
Yeah, they said, it's going to be a little bit loud because there's the parade right down the street. We're like, oh, that's part of the tradition. What's wrong with that? It's St. Joseph's Day.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Fava beans. Yeah. Your aunt says you like those.
Oh my gosh, I call them lucky beans. I think a lot of us do, because that was the bean that when there was a famine, that was the only thing that really grew and could help feed people. And so I've always just carry lucky beans around whenever I can, and I rub on them for good luck, and it's just a tradition. John Henkel really helped start that for me, and he was a mentor of mine in the state legislature, and he just loved those Italian traditions. And he was half German, but he was half Italian, and he loved his Italian heritage and shared it all the time.
Now, you represent, your territory for Congress has gotten bigger. And I mean, you actually have a lot of the regions that the Sicilians migrated to, up north, Hammond, Ponchatoula. So you must really still see a lot of the Sicilian culture outside of New Orleans.
I do. I love getting out to those places. And, and in Tangipahoa Hope Parish, they still have the Italian festival, and a lot of Italians there, and everywhere you go. And I get to go to a lot of other states with the position that I have as the Republican whip. And it's amazing how many people that are Italian come up and go, wow, you're Italian, and we have a great community here, and and everybody wants to invite you to their restaurant. Now I've got a great Italian restaurant here, and it's just fun to see how people still embrace that culture because we love this great country. So many people fled other countries to come to America, and the American dream's alive and well. But to hold on to your traditions, the things that keep your community tight. And the Italian community is such a wonderful group of people, hardworking people. The values are great, and the food is great too.
St. Joseph's Day is really a day where they prayed to end that famine, and then they honor that. But I see in your book, you talk a lot about prayer. I mean, there's some great lessons I got out of the book that prayer is like really positive thinking. I mean, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, because my faith has been so much a part of who I am. I'm a Catholic. I went to Archbishop Rummel High School, went to public schools early off, went to Rummel, got that Catholic education before I went to LSU. But my faith has always driven the core of my values. And so when I was on the baseball field back in 2017 and they had the shooting and I was shot, after I'm just kind of crawling away to get away from the gunfire and my arms gave out. And at that point you can't move and you're still hearing gunfire and I don't know if I'm going to make it. I don't know if the next shot's going to be the end. And then I just started thinking about some really heavy things and I went straight to prayer. I said, I can't do anything now to physically move. I'm going to pray to God and put it in His hands. And I did. And, He performed miracles on the ball field that day.
You talk about how many things had to perfectly fit for your survival. I mean, it's strange to actually interview you today, realizing how so many things had to fall in place, and you really credit God a lot with responding to your prayers.
Yeah, it's so true because, you look on paper at what happened that day. A crazed gunman shows up and wants to kill all of us on that ball field. And at the end of the day, if you'd say everybody's alive except the gunman, nobody would believe you, and yet that's what happened. And it happened only because of miracles. And I laid that out in the book because I wanted to catalog it. I lay out specific things and, okay, this might be a coincidence. That might, by the time you're at the fifth thing, it's not a coincidence. It's God was on that ball field. And He continued to look out for me. And I've always prayed to God. I did it privately. I started sharing my story later when people said, look, you really need to tell people about that so people that don't have the same kind of faith can see just why it's so important to have a relationship with God. And, on a normal night, I'll finish a long day and you have good days, you have bad days, but every day good things and bad things happen to you. And at that point, it's up to you to decide which approach are you going to take? Are you going to focus on the negative or the positive? And so I always pray to God. And what I'd like to do is first thank Him for the good things. Because, too often people just pray to God when,
right.
I'll wait until the night before a big test and then I'll pray to God to help me with the test, and I hadn't studied. That's not when you pray to God. You pray to God every day. And that way you're thanking Him for the things, and it also reminds you of what good things happened. It helps you see the positive because too often you only focus on the negative. And surely there's negative we all face, but we also face positive things too. And at that point it's a decision. Are you going to let the negative or the positive things in your life drive what your focus is going to be and determine whether or not you're a happy person or a sad person? I choose to be a happy person, and I'm blessed to have good things happen to me, but bad things happen too. You just don't let that bog you down.
Now, I saw that in your book as I read it, and really, once you start reading your book, you don't put it down. I mean, it's very powerful, a great book, and I saw that you said, let's give thanks for what we have and not just always be asking for things. I do want to ask, in your book, you also talk about Cedric Richmond.
Yeah.
And but you like to play baseball, so you stole home base on him.
Cedric's the star baseball player for the congressional team. The Republicans have played the Democrats in Congress in a baseball game for probably almost 100 years. It's a great tradition. We're competitive people by nature, and you battle it out on policy in the Capitol, but you shouldn't make those differences personal, and I think too many people do that on both sides. And if you question somebody's integrity just because they disagree with you, you're probably not going to be able to work with them on things where you agree. And so I try to keep my differences based on the policy, but I also build relationships with people. Cedric and I have a great relationship going back to our days in the State House. But when we play baseball against each other, I want to win. And he's really good, but we have some skills too. One day I had one of the games a few years ago, I had stolen third base on him. So I'm on second base. I steal third. He's the pitcher. And so then I'm at third, and we're kind of going back and forth with each other a little bit while he's on the mound. And so he winds up, and I just take off. and the pitch was a little bit wide, and I stole home, and one of the big newspapers in D.C. took a picture of me hauling down the first baseline, and I'm in my Rummel uniform. I wear different uniforms all the time. And then there he is, and he's just got this look on his face like, geez, I'm never going to hear the end of it. And I blew it up, and I give it to people that come from New Orleans. And, he might have won the game, and he's the MVP, but I stole home on him, and I'm never going to let him forget it.
I wouldn't either. I saw you at Slidell. You, when you're in town, you seem like you make it very important to thank our military.
I do. We're so lucky, again, to live in the greatest country in the history of the world, and we've got these freedoms that everybody in the world seeks out. Because we've had brave men and women over 240 years risk their lives to protect those freedoms. And so when I get the opportunity, especially as a member of Congress, we have to make a concerted effort to ensure that we're taking care of our men and women in uniform when they come home. We've had problems with the VA, and we've worked on a lot of those so that they get the care they need when they come home. And I've had service members over the years who have reached out for help. Right when I came in office, there was a military service member who, it was not him as much as his family. He had gotten the Purple Heart and won a number of other distinguished honors during his time in World War II, but he was older, and his family they lost all of his medals in Hurricane Katrina. So he had all these medals, and then their home flooded, and they lost everything. And they were trying to see if they could get those back. And so I went to work with the Department of Defense, and we verified all of the things that he had earned, including the Purple Heart. And we showed, this was his house, what happened on Hurricane Katrina. And they reissued all of them. And we got to present those to him. And to see a World War II veteran who is in tears because you're reissuing these things that mean so much to him and his family. And I didn't risk my life like he did, yet, you can help people, and it matters a lot. And so, at the time there was a service member who turned 100. And and he fit in his uniform that he wore in World War II.
Yes.
We did a ceremony for him, and I presented him with a flag flown over the Capitol, and here he is, just teared up, and he's the one who did all the heroic things, and he still fits in his uniform from World War II. It just lifts you up. I mean, it fires you up when you see these folks, and and there's not enough we can do for them, and I get an honor to be able to help veterans all the time, and it never gets old.
You talk about Louisiana hospitality.
Louisiana's got such a great culture, and especially New Orleans. Like anywhere you go in the world, and I get to travel, I meet with kings and queens and heads of state. And I was with Prime Minister Netanyahu in Israel, and we're meeting in Jerusalem, and you talk about historic land. It's the Jewish state, but for Catholics, that's the Stations of the Cross. You get to walk those very stations that Jesus walked. And then I'm meeting with the Prime Minister, and we're talking, and as I'm introducing myself, I said, I'm from New Orleans. And his eyes light up, and he goes, oh, New Orleans. And he goes, do y'all still have those things? And he's trying to describe, and I said, beignets. He goes, yeah, beignets. He's talking about little donuts at the powder sugar. And so I sent him a box of Café du Monde beignets later on, and we've developed a great relationship. But people love our culture, and our food is such a big part of that from New Orleans. And I love sharing that with my colleagues. I bring members of Congress into, and it's not a hard sell, by the way.
No.
You say, hey, do you want to come to New Orleans? And, we'll show you some of the things and talk about the issues we're facing, coastal erosion. Well, the entree to get them here is the food, and they love coming.
And I know you got a great relationship with Tommy Santanovich. When you have your victory parties on election night
at Drago's, I've been to Andrea's before. Chef Andrea's a great, Italian American. But Tommy and I have developed a great relationship. And Tommy Santanovich, just one of the great ambassadors for New Orleans all around. And and he's Croatian family. They fled communism. And Clara Santanovich is still there at the restaurant every night. And it's just the work ethic that embodies what the American dream is. And of course, they share that dream through food. They just have a passion. And nobody's better at it than the New Orleanians. Our chefs we've developed so many great meals here, but of course we brought a lot of the great meals from our homeland too.
And in Mardi Gras with Bacchus, it's great that they have a hospitality float to help that industry learn how to market or do other things to bring people here. Because Mardi Gras is such a great thing.
Our hospitality leaders are so involved in the community. You see so many of the great chefs, and they've got their famous restaurants, but they give back to the community too. And then the Bacchitality float is a float in Bacchus, and I've been riding with them for years now, and Tommy's on that float. You've got Emeril Lagasse, who has some great Italian heritage too. Emeril rides on the float, and he's got foundations where he gives back to the community as well. So many of the people that we all know famously from their restaurants, but they also do so much for the community. And I think, they always deserve credit for that, because it's important to see how you take care of people that are less fortunate, because we've all been there.
Election night, your kids seem like they love throwing T-shirts. So that was a great moment in time.
It was a lot of fun, we have every 2 years I run, and I'm honored to serve Southeast Louisiana in Congress. And so we have a victory party, and you hope you win first, but you celebrate the wins. And my kids, they're 13 and 11 years old, and so they're fun ages, and we still get to do a lot of neat, fun things with them. But we had gotten a bunch of T-shirts, and I let them throw the T-shirts to the crowd. And
Harrison's got an arm.
Harrison's got a pretty good arm. He was flinging it way down the way. So we had a lot of fun with that. And like I said, you work hard. I have to get on a plane and fly to D.C. Every week, and I miss a lot of things that my kids go through. And my wife Jennifer's, she's like a single mom during the week, bless her heart. And and when I get home, I want to spend that time with them, because I miss a lot of things too. So these are precious ages, and you want to take in as much as you can.
You've been to the National Italian American Foundation in D.C. So that's also like bipartisan. I mean, when those meetings happen, it's everybody comes together and has dinner and just celebrates being Italian.
Yeah, you meet a lot of great people through that, and there's some, there's rough and tumble in Congress, and we all have disagreements. Republicans disagree with each other, by the way, but then you see the big battles in Congress between the Republicans and the Democrats and all these different groups, and yet we come together as Italian Americans through this caucus that we're in, and we'll go out and have great meals together, and you get to know people at a different level. And I remember it was not long after Osama bin Laden was killed, and Barack Obama's president, but Leon Panetta was the CIA director and helped coordinate the intelligence behind knowing or having a high probability that bin Laden was in that house that night. And he shared a story with us about pre-raid, and then ultimately that night what happened before the movie came out. And it was really, you're kind of starstruck when you're listening to this, because you're in Congress, you serve with some incredibly wonderful people, some amazing people, but here you are with the CIA director, and he's a Democrat, but we're all Americans that wanted bin Laden to be held accountable for what he did on September 11th, and for him to tell that story, in a small setting of a few people, it was really, it reminds you that we've got differences, but we also share a lot of things in common too.
Now, I brought a baseball bat.
Yeah.
You had a great story in your book about the bat. Tell me the story.
This goes back to when the Saints won the Super Bowl that year. They were on that great run, and Sean Payton wanted to do something to kind of excite the team when they had that first playoff game in the Superdome. And you remember Reggie Bush running out holding up a baseball bat, and Sean had him custom made, and it said "Bring the wood." And it was that motto that just bring everything you have for this. And so when I ran for the House Majority Whip position, I was not supposed to win. I wasn't the chosen one, so to speak, by the insiders, and yet I had a lot of support from my colleagues on the Republican side. And then, I got a core group of members together that were helping me to reach out to members that I didn't even know that I was asking to support me for Majority Whip. And then the day of the election, I wanted to do something special for everybody. So Marucci's a great bat maker in Baton Rouge, and we had some friends over there, and said, can you do a rush order of I'd love to have bats and put Bring the Wood and Scalise Whip team. And sure enough, we gave them to all of our top supporters. And that morning of the vote, we all got together in one of the big committee rooms, and I gave them all the bats, and it pumped them up. It really pumped everybody up. And many of them still have those bats on their walls in their offices in Congress, as do I.
So do you think just the Italian heritage that we have, is that really helping Congress?
It helps a lot. And I tell my colleagues, even the newly elected members, you can work like a dog every single day, and then at the end of the day, you don't even remember what it is you started off trying out to do. I mean, we all run for different reasons. I have strong, passionate beliefs in this country, what I think is the things we need to do to keep America going strong. But everybody has those things, but then it's easy to lose sight of them as you're working every day. And many days you're working on other people's issues. You don't always get to focus on the things you want, because things arise that you have no control over. COVID-19 just a year ago wasn't even something on anybody's radar, and yet today it's shut down our economy. And so you want to remember what you're fighting for along the way. And so what I tell people is, you work hard, you play hard, and you celebrate the wins along the way. Wow. And we do all of those things together. And I think it helps remind a lot of other colleagues of mine why you're up there. You're up there to make this a better country, but if you just work hard like a dog every day, you really, it's easy for people to get, to kind of get sidetracked or to get jaded by the way that Washington works. You've got to stay focused, and you've got to try to stay positive. And it's helped me stay positive and stay focused on the mission. And I think a lot of other people have embraced that too, because it's a fun way to live. I mean, we're fun, happy people. And in the end, you can walk around moping all day long and figuring out and focusing on the thing that you didn't get today, or you can focus on the things you did and what you want to do. You never stop fighting for what you believe in. But you also ought to remember what you achieved as well, because it helps drive you. It helps you want to wake up the next morning and do even more.
So you're the whip. That comes from a 17th century deal.
It goes back to hunting terms, but the whipper in, it's kind of a thing, getting the hunting dogs to go and help you with the hunt that day. But really for Congress, what the whip does is to bring people together on the things that we need to come together on. And, whether it's helping pass a major piece of legislation, and I've gotten to work on many major pieces of legislation, in getting the votes necessary to pass the bill. So if we make a decision that, next week we want to bring a bill to the floor to do this, you better be able to pass the bill, because if it gets to the floor and it fails, because not everybody might be for what you want to do, but they might not like the way that bill does it. And so what I do is I reach out to all of our members to find out where they are. And, in every whip we've had over decades, and there have been a lot of whips. Newt Gingrich was the whip for a period of time. He became speaker. Hale Boggs
was the
last Republican to hold this position from anybody for Louisiana. Hale was a Democrat, but there's a Democrat whip and a Republican whip. And, Hale's approach was different. My approach is different. What I try to do is build relationships first and then build coalitions, because it's coalition building. And if somebody's not for the bill, Tom DeLay had the reputation, his nickname was the Hammer, and it wasn't a pretty meeting when you would meet with him. And, and I have some heated conversations sometimes with people, but mostly what I try to do is listen to what they're trying to achieve. And if this bill does it a little bit differently than you're trying to do it, ultimately, let's see if we can come to an agreement on how we can both get the same thing. And we're not always going to get everything we want, but you don't compromise your principles, but you try to advance your causes. And that's what I try to help people do, and it's worked really well. We've been able to build a lot of big coalitions on some very important things that have improved people's lives. At the end of the day, that's why you're here. You're trying to make this a better country. I want to pass on what's great about America and these traditions to my kids so that they have the same opportunity I had. And we all have a different way we might want to go about doing it, but you better have 218 votes if you want to get it done. And so that means you have to work with other people. And that's what the whip does, is builds those coalitions. It's a great job.
Now, do you feel a certain legacy there with Hale Boggs to you? I mean, that was 40 years plus that we go without Louisiana having you in such a position. And now you've got it. And I'm thinking Hale Boggs I knew a little bit when I was a younger guy, but that's great that you're there. And do you think about Hale?
I do, this Hale Boggs passed away in 1972 in a plane wreck in Alaska. And, and you still think about all of those things. And Lindy Boggs, his wife became a great leader herself, was the ambassador to the Vatican. I got to meet her before she passed away, and a special lady. But one of the neat things I get to do is I actually work. My office in the United States Capitol is the office that Hale Boggs used to have.
Really?
You want to talk about some unreal history. And in fact, when Hale died, Tip O'Neill was behind Hale. Hale was the majority leader at the time. He'd been the whip, had just gotten elected majority leader, was going to be Speaker of the House, and then he died in a plane wreck in Alaska. And so Tip O'Neill was the whip at the time, became the majority leader, got his office, and then ultimately Tip O'Neill became the Speaker, as we all know. And so to sit in the same office in the United States Capitol that Hale Boggs sat in is just unreal history. I get to look out that window and look at the Capitol Dome. I look down and look at the Washington Monument. I used to have an office that Abraham Lincoln used to have. So to live that history of our country, this great nation that we've formed and continue to keep those traditions going, how lucky can a guy be?
Is there any message you want to give to people that, as advice as far as how we should be living our lives and get along better with each other?
You should always focus on the positive. You should always fight for the things you believe in, but don't make your differences with people personal. Look, we get along great with our family, but we also sometimes disagree with our family. Now, we also know family who they make their differences personal and they don't even talk to each other, and that's a shame, because we all ought to figure out how we can get along with each other. figure out how you can advance your cause, advance the things you believe in, and never stop fighting to make this a great country. You know, we're lucky to live in this great country. So many people came here by different means to be a part of the American dream. There are still millions of people all around the world who want to come here and can't. And so it should be our obligation to continue to keep it a great country, to make it an even better country for our kids and our grandkids, and never forget how blessed we are to live in America. I'm lucky to be alive, and I thank God every day.
And also thank you for what you've done for the Italian community here. I mean, it's just such an inspiration when we see someone fourth generation and where you've gone, and the pride that your ancestors must have, knowing that with their sacrifices were able to help you get to what we all dream about being, contributing to America. It's just wonderful.
I'm proud of my Italian heritage. So many people helped me along the way when I was struggling, and you know, and maybe not in as strong of a position. And I try to pass that on too. And we should always, you know, we help each other. We play it forward. And I love my Italian American heritage.
With that, I want to ask you to autograph my bat, and maybe if you'll put "Bring the Wood" on it, we can go with that.
We will.
And I'll do that.
We'll definitely do that. All right. There you go.
That's great. Thank you. Steve, I want to thank you for being on the show. And again, thank you for all you do for the Italian community, for Louisiana, for America, and really for the world. So it's just a pleasure that we have you in Congress.
Well, lucky to be able to do this. And thank you for continuing to keep our heritage alive.
With that, I want to say keep bringing the wood.
Bring the wood.
And stay tuned. We'll be right back with more Celebrating Culture.